Welcome to Hope Talks, Conversations for Special Needs Families. This is a space where we talk about challenges that families face, and we provide information and resources that help you on your journey, not just now, but also into the future. I'm Julie Cadman, your host. I'm also the co-founder of Healing Complex Kids and the co-author of Pathway to Hope Resource Guide for Special Needs. Today, we're going to be talking about how families can stay together and couples can stay married. With an 80 to 90% divorce rate in the special needs family population, it's a huge concern. And joining me is Jim Blundo, a local expert and amazing person who knows so much about helping families and helping couples especially to stay together and to kind of figure out what do they need to do to be stronger together, not only as couples, but as families. Thank you for joining us, Jim.
You're welcome.
So I have a very serious question for you to begin with.
Okay.
When a couple comes in to see you, I've heard that you have a kind of a funny way to go, but do you say something like, are you in it for the long haul? Are you done? I mean, how do you approach it?
Well, I ask them, should I stay or should I go? And that's the theme you start with.
Do you sing it to them?
No, I do not.
I think that would be fun.
I could, but most people don't want to hear my singing.
Okay.
The reason that there has to be a commitment before an action. So when they come to me, they're obviously in stress. And the question of whether staying or going is really paramount for them. So I have to figure out who's committed and how much, and if they're not, how can they get committed in a way that makes sense? Or is this futile, which occasionally happens. But most people don't give it a chance to see if they can work something through in order to stay. It can be a huge growth in their lives, actually. So that's why I try to figure that out up front.
And you do it with a little humor, but there's also that edge. Are you going to stay or are you in it for the long haul? I like that.
I'm pretty direct. I've been doing this for over 40 years, so I know that I'm not here to kind of spend a lot of time trying to figure out what's up front. I have some pretty good idea about people's personalities and do they seem compatible. So there has to be some nugget of compatibility, like they love each other or their kids they really love and they want to do something, but they don't know how to go about it.
So let's start out with, we're gonna go down this path. Let's start out with a family comes in and they have a child or multiple with special needs and they're struggling. What are 3 to 4 immediate strategies that you give them if they say, yeah, we're in it, but we don't know what to do? What would you tell them?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want them to kind of differentiate because every situation is somewhat different. Mm-hmm. And where the status, there's age and medical, emotional demands and all that. I try to sort out those pieces with them because if you're going to get them to work together, they have to know which directions they might want to go. They need resources, obviously, but my job isn't to deal with resources, but to refer them for resources. But I want to find out just how much they know. They know nothing, they know something. I may send them on do some homework about what it is. And I sometimes have them write a letter to each other, the couple, and say, this is what I would like to see happen. And this is what I don't think I can handle, admitting your frailty and also admitting your strengths. That's kind of what I do with people.
So you just made me think of something. Say you have a couple come in and one says, I can't handle blah, 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 which is basically you and the children.
That's right.
And does that happen very often?
It does. And they need to talk about what I see happening is sometimes either one of the couple or both need some maturity to handle their lives and they don't know quite what to do. There's nothing like this kind of background problem to make the relationship fall apart because they don't know how to be intimate in a different kind of way and know how to communicate what they need and don't need. It's real important to talk about what you don't think you can handle as well as what you can handle. And both parties need to be able to talk about that. If they can't talk about it, it makes it really harder to keep them together. Sometimes that brings the conclusion at some point in seeing them that they can't do this together. They may have to be a divorce and work together. maybe the one person is so narcissistic that they can't help at all. I have to figure all that out. I work very fast in my mind to figure out where they are. And I have lots of years of experience on figuring out where people are coming from.
And if they can do it or not.
Yeah,
Exactly.
you have to figure that out. It's very important to be successful.
Now, what about couples? Because there's a lot of division of labor, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
And what we've seen is quite often one of the partners ends up staying home and dealing with the child or children.
It's a major job.
Yeah, it is. Medical issues, insurance, kind of going. It's 24/7. And we've also seen sometimes the person who's working comes home and thinks my job's done.
Yeah, but that can't happen. That's what has to change. Some people would refuse to do that, and other people would learn by listening, because you can work full time and you have to have somebody be the provider financially, and this is the provider for the home situation. But the decision making regarding those medical, emotional, other things has to still come to the forefront. You still have to be involved on that level. It isn't over at 5 o'clock. It isn't at the end of the day. I've done my job, I brought the money, now you fix everything. That doesn't work.
And it's interesting because my husband and I have co-parented really well through all of our issues with different things. And one of the things that I've often said is I would much rather be working than dealing with this, because it's hard.
Sure, if you're there 24/7,
Yeah.
it's not a 9-to-5 job, and he or she is working full time. It's a real difficult balance. That's why being able to talk about things continuously, not just once a week or once a month or whatever, but probably every day, how you're doing. The person who's been with the child all day long needs to debrief at the end of the day, and the spouse needs to be able to listen to that and then do some solution. Guys are usually solution oriented. That's a good thing if they can do it in the right way, but not to expect you to do more and more. Because if you're falling apart, caretakers often crumble before the people they take care of. So you want to be strong internally. So the person listening, your partners can be very powerful in helping each other deal with such a stressful thing.
Grab your copy of Pathway to Hope Resource Guide for Special Needs on Amazon. It's a roadmap filled with strategies, tools, and encouragement to help your family thrive. So how do you encourage, when you see a couple that, I'll give an example, they love each other, but they have just all of the stress and overwhelm that's been thrown into the relationship. How do you get them to break apart pieces and to start really communicating?
Interesting question. What I do with them is I think there's a connection between their inability to relate, and it goes all the way back to their youth and childhood and or other marriages, and they need to figure out how to relate in a different way. And so that's what I do is I look at the strategies that you develop as children to survive in a family and their strengths and weaknesses within it. So I help them articulate that in front of each other. And then I talk about where those weak spots are, how we can learn how to communicate differently. There's nothing more maturing than learning how to communicate, and a lot of people don't know how to get to that level. So I don't condemn people because they don't know that. I think people need to understand themselves better. The strategy concept for me is the most powerful tool in your ability to function as an adult, because the strategies you learned as a kid by modeling or by behavior or in defense of yourself with a parent who's dysfunctional, all those things are important to know, to understand. That mix is very important. That's why it's very individualized.
Let's talk about how you encourage couples to talk about their deep feelings, about their fears, and to go deep in that relationship.
Yeah, the first thing is you can't go deep in the relationship without going deep within yourself. So what I like to do, I always say I don't do marriage counseling. I do couples counseling. Big difference to me. Marriage counseling is trying to negotiate a way to survive together or negotiate something. That's okay on the surface. But I go deeper because I want to know what's behind your feelings and your thinking. And first of all, I find out how you relate strategy-wise, your temperament. Does he fly off? Does she fly off? Do they not talk? Do they pout? I find out all those crazy things couples do. And then I kind of figure out with them their background. Because the systems that we develop, I talk about strategies, the way we develop as children is to figure out how to negotiate with our parents. People don't think of it that way, but every kid from a very early age is negotiating with each parent, and it's different from each parent. So I go back and I look at what was good and bad about the relationship. So I have them write a letter, not to give to the parent, but to give to me, which says, this is what I want to thank you for what you've given me. That's the starting point. And then tell them what I needed but didn't get. And that's very hard to do. But if they do that, then what happens, it awakens in their adult life on where the tripwires are in their relationship. And once they start talking about it, the other person goes, oh my God, I've been married to you for 25 years and I never knew that you thought that way or that you saw it that way. So it's really powerful. So I have both couples do that separately and then come in with it. And some people don't like to do it, but they can do it verbally. It's not like a must-do assignment, but it's a strategy that I found helps them. If you go back and the preceding life that you have before you get into the couple relationship helps you then to figure out how to navigate it. Because we repeat some of the same resistance, like angry at your parent, so you're angry at your spouse. That correlates if you haven't figured it out. If you figure out why you were mad at your parent, there might have been some legitimacy to it, and then some of it's really messed up. It's directed in the wrong direction. So I help them navigate that as best I can. It takes a while to do the kind of therapy I do, but the outcome is really a lot better. I've saved a lot of marriages through doing that, whereas a lot of people went to marriage counseling and it's strictly a behavior change, and the person changes their behavior and it doesn't change the relationship. I had a guy come in once and say, I've done everything she told me to do, the dishes, the folding the clothes, the blah, 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 blah. And he said, she hasn't changed a bit. I said, well, it's not only about behavior. There's feelings that have to be resolved and figured out behind that. There's more to a relationship than whether you obey or not. So that's why I go through all that.
I love that there's more to a relationship than whether you obey or not.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's strong.
Yeah, it is.
Well, and going back and figuring out like your fears, what's going on with you, and healing. It's almost like that little child within you that was hurt.
That's right. It heals the child. That's a good point. Because once you put a voice to what you can put a voice to, it lifts you. That's why talk therapy is so powerful if you do it well. If you just do like a behavior change thing or how do you feel kind of thing, that won't get you anywhere. But so the child part of us grows up as you put a voice to it, because as a child, you're silent in any trauma situation, whether small, big, or abandonment or whatever has happened to you, or even in terms of a child with mental or physical issues. It really is important to talk about all that in front of the other partner, because then they understand you in a different way and you understand them in a different way, and it allows the coupling to be stronger. And that's the best way to keep a relationship going. And in that 10% that's saved that don't get divorced, that's probably what you're seeing. You're probably seeing some strengths about that they've worked through. Some people do their own counseling, but it helps a lot. And most people don't get the opportunity to have somebody like me going to talk to them about that end of it. And nobody ever gets to it. The self-help books don't usually help a whole lot. And a lot of marriage counseling people don't really look too, I shouldn't say that because some do, but some don't look very deep, and they aren't that helpful in the long run. And so I've had many people come to me and say, well, we've tried counseling and it didn't work. I said, well, this will be different. I promise you may like and not like. I've had people say, well, I really kind of wanted to hate you at sometimes because you just knocked right on the door, something that's really heavy for me. But you really have to improve and develop the relationship. That's the gift of having difficult children to raise. because it strengthens your ability to be a maturing adult and be a good partner to each other. Because it's natural to want to be in a partnership for most people. It's very rare people who don't want to be in a relationship, but it does happen.
For families that have gone through early trauma, or couples, I would say, that have each gone through, everyone has their own trauma, but when they've gone through their individual trauma, and now they're having it compounded because now they're seeing their child maybe traumatized, medically, educationally, whatever's going on. How do you talk to the parents in terms of saying, or do you say something like, you need a date night, you need something where you don't even talk about the child, where you just have fun?
Actually, I don't do that.
You don't? Okay, tell me.
Not at all.
Okay.
Because what that boils down to is a surface fix, which is, those are fine things to do. I think people figure that out once they start talking to each other more about what their needs are. Then they say, well, we decided we're going to spend more time together, and so they make a date or whatever. That comes naturally from the conversation to me. I don't do the prescription kind of resolution because that won't get to the core of what they need to do to make this work. They need to work this relationship out in a deeper way, and part of it can be that. I may suggest that at some point and say, have the two of you ever thought about getting away for a day or two and talking about some of these things, or just having time with no stress? And they may say yes or no. So they come up with it. I may enhance it a little bit.
One of the things that I think I might have shared with you is we've had conferences, and I've had so many moms come up to me almost like a secret and say, I haven't left my child in 10 years. And the record was 14 years.
Yeah. Well, that gets into another piece of this. If the mom was a victim in childhood, it's very easy to fall into being a caretaker in the wrong way. There's healthy caretaking and there's unhealthy caretaking. Unhealthy caretaking is completely capitulating yourself to somebody's needs without looking at yours. That's not healthy.
It's not good self-care. There's no self-care.
There's no self-care. If you learn, and I can help people figure out what the boundaries are, because they'll tell me things that they do, and I'll say, your child may be okay without you having to do that. Let's look at what you need to do to develop boundaries for your own sanity, because most caretakers who go over that deep end, who become victims and then just tear themselves down without realizing it, they usually either die or get sick before anything else happens.
They end up with some big health issues.
Yeah, terrible health issues. So the most important thing is to have boundaries, and I think it helps men and women to have healthy boundaries even with each other. And if I can help them build that, which might be somewhat confrontational, but why are you doing that? Why are you not asking for help? Why are you not? So I pose a lot of questions about, why are you letting that happen to you?
We've had moms a couple times come to events where we would have an overnight event that would have to leave early because a lot of times it was a mom event. Their spouse did not know what to do. And I remember one woman in particular, it happened one time. She left and she said, I'm coming next year and this is never happening again. And it didn't. She stepped up, and so did her husband. And it sounds like from your saying that is so important to have that.
It's very important to know. Boundaries for all of us are the most important thing we do. If you don't have good boundaries, you're going to get used, abused, or you're going to do the opposite and do that to other people. Mm-hmm. So you have to have respect for each other on that level. And that was a good example. You have to learn how to have boundaries, because my first thought when you said she had to go home early, I would have wanted to know the why behind it, and are there any alternatives that you haven't looked at? What are some that you might have looked at to take care of the situation? Even if your husband said, I can't do it, he can do it, but why? There may be some really things that are very difficult for either partner to do. So you have to really, that's why it's important to talk about this and talk about the difficulty and the struggle, and then boundaries are extremely important. And that's part of maturity too. Women and men who don't have good boundaries get themselves in a lot of trouble in lots of different ways.
They do, absolutely.
Intimacy problems, infidelity, a lot, cheat. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to mess your life up. It's a weird gift, but it's a good gift for you to figure out your life in a more strategic way and to become the master of your destiny is what I call it. So you have to really work at that, and that situation forces you to have to do that. You see people who have been through awful things as adults even, and they discovered a whole much stronger, better self. Because most people are resilient enough to figure that out. They just need people to help them get there.
Grab your copy of Pathway to Hope Resource Guide for Special Needs on Amazon. It's a roadmap filled with strategies, tools, and encouragement to help your family thrive. We have several couples we know that have become really strong couples, not only within themselves, but helping other families because of what they've gone through.
That's right.
And I think they've
That's
probably
true,
done
right.
a lot of the things you've talked about just naturally saying, wait a minute.
That's right. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't take a therapist. Sometimes people have the relationship ability to communicate and figure it out. That's really good.
So can you give us some daily or weekly habits that are going to help keep a marriage strong when it's under stress?
It's too simplistic for my way of doing this. Having weekly habits, those would come naturally.
Okay.
If you understand each other and you're in tune with the difficulties are, ups and downs, and we're communicating it, and you would speak out what you need, and he would speak out what he needs.
Because it's different for every couple.
Women are probably overly trained to be caretakers, and men are undertrained to be caretakers. They're taught to be more self-centered and more focused on objects and things and solutions. And there's a place for all of those, but it has to be shared. That's what's missing for most people. And a lot of men will run because they don't really participate because they don't know how. And they think of it as frustration, stress. They get mad at the spouse because they're pushing on them. And here's the problem. Once the wife is getting upset, she's pushing, and that creates that tension. And then he's pushing in resentment, and he becomes defensive and thinking that she's just being whatever, blah, 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 overly. Well, the core of the problem is behind that. And that's where most people get stuck out there. She said, I wouldn't be bitching at you. I wouldn't be telling you if you were doing more. And he's saying, well, I am doing more. I'm earning money, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing that. The answer doesn't come from either of those defenses. So both parties are mad at each other, and they hate each other for that. And it really breaks the relationship down. So it's getting by that piece to talk about how you can both change the way you do things, because she may need to lighten up in certain ways, not necessarily change anything, because what's happened is she needs to frame the bigger picture of how frustrated she is and how demanding it is and how it's breaking her down. And he needs to listen to that. And then he needs to think about how he can step in ways that are solution-oriented, because men are that way. Sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's not. And women will say, I just want you to listen. And that goes so far, but men don't listen on the right level. That's why I do, I've done some workshops on listening differently. I like to get men and women to listen differently about what they need and what's going on, because it isn't as easily, they say just communicate. That word is used as global. Well, how do I communicate? I think I'm communicating. I do more. I say more. No, there's different ways to do that. You have to include your feelings and thoughts both, and figure out how to mature within that relationship in order to make it work. So there aren't any easy, like, if you just do this or that, that'll make it long term. Short term, it can be helpful.
It's like a Band-Aid. It almost sounds like it's a Band-Aid, but it's not, like you said, it's not getting to the heart. It's not getting to the root cause.
But to speak to my other side of this is, it does help if somebody says, if I'll help you and do this, or you do that. There are things you can do on an immediacy basis, but you have to get behind that, all that anger and resentment and stress that was in there. I had a guy who grew up with a mother who was very, very hard on him and yelled at him a lot and blah, 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 blah. So now when his wife gets really upset because she has needs, he does what he did. The strategy was pull back.
It triggers him.
Or yell out, and then he's mad at you. And you're just being a bee, you know?
Mm-hmm. So it's like the trigger.
Yeah, it's a trigger for him. So you have to lay all those things out clearly. I can do that in pretty short order. It sounds like a long-term process. But in a few months of sessions, I can help them really focus, because I don't spend a ton of time just letting them ramble on, because people can ramble on. And the other thing that happens is in couples is they try to what's called triangulation.
I was going to ask you about that. Good.
Take my side over the other one.
Yeah.
And what's one of the reasons that I don't like a lot of therapy situation is because they win over the side. The man or the woman, it can work either way. They win over the side and they gang up on the other partner. You become a third partner in a marriage. No, I'm not doing that one. I'm not getting in the middle of that. I'll even tell them I can see what you're doing. Yeah, and I want to be helpful.
It's not going to work.
But you don't need me in the middle of it. So I'm not going to let it focus. Because I've had a number of couples who've come to me and they've been to therapists and said they took his side or they took her side and they ganged up on me. And there's a therapist friend of mine out in Massachusetts. She calls it getting knocked out of your chair, the therapist. If they can get you to take sides, they triangulate you in order to get a thing done. And even if you don't think you want to do that, you may go in thinking you're going to fix your wife or you're going to fix your husband. I need to fix both of you. And I want you to focus on that, not on...
So I want to take you back to triangulation, because sometimes you're going to have a situation where you're just looking at it and saying, well, partner A is not going to change. Partner B is really trying to. This is not going to work.
Yeah, I also face that reality with clients too. Not in the beginning, but if we go down a road where it just continue, and can't do anything, I can recommend each of them see separate therapists for one thing. Or the reality is that sometimes it's not going to work. And divorce may sound like a dirty word, but in some cases, that may be the only way. The only thing, the next piece I want to know is, are you willing to take care of this child even though you're going to be divorced? Because if you've reached that point where all of your other ways of dealing with this don't work for you, then I want your responsibility is to take care of this person financially or emotionally somehow.
And to figure out if you can't co-parent here, you still have to co-parent going forward.
You can never get out of that corner. I actually don't think anybody can get out of the corner of co-parenting with their children, even if everything's fine. Because I've seen couples who are stuck together or divorced and they still have a relationship with their adult children. It's a commitment you make in life to have kids. And it's a good thing. But it also requires you to be an adult. So that's how I work.
So I love what you said about facing your fears, looking at what's inside and going deep, because I think that's really missing with so many couples.
Sure.
The one thing I think we're missing, and I'm going to push you a little bit on this one, okay. We still need a little bit of hey, here's some things you can do. Even though it's naturally, I hear what you say, it's naturally going to come together at some point. But for someone who's very goal-oriented, which a lot of men are, and they might need to have a prescription, or females may need to be like, hey, you're not hearing me. I need to talk about this. I've spent all day with the kids. I've got this, I've got that. How do we give just one or two things that they can start doing? Because we want to do everything we can to stop that 80 to 90% divorce rate.
Well, what I was talking about will probably help. But I have done this before. I've had them both make that list. He just said all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And he can make a list too. But mostly it'll be the woman who makes the list because she's the main caretaker.
And she's going to make a list of what exactly? What do you have her do?
The things you just were talking about. I need to do this. I need you to do that.
I need help.
Yeah, I need help with this. I need help with that. You can make a list, and that list can then be shared, and then he can see it in a different way, not just verbally, but here.
Oh.
And especially guys who are engineers are really good with that. That really works with them. So then they can see what your needs are more clearly, because that's what you're speaking to, is your needs for immediate relief and service, because there's a lot of layers on all this. Mm-hmm. So you can lay all those out, and he can check off what he can do and what he can't do, and then he'd be surprised to know that maybe he can do some of those things, and that's his solution-oriented, goal-oriented. Yeah, I can do this, I can do that. I've done that with clients before too.
Well, and I can even say, like, that if the guy is working and he comes home and he says, I need 15 minutes before you drop everything on me.
Sure.
There could be anything.
That's what you need. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All of those things. We all have personal needs that we don't explain or share. We react way too much. Most people wait until things fester. So if you can, if 15 minutes is what you need, then the other partner can do it. Sometimes they don't listen either way. So putting it in writing can make that happen. So I've done that before successfully, but it's also part of the whole strategy of having them look at what they need more deeply. It's very important to learn how to have boundaries, and most people don't have the best boundaries, and especially women caretakers who have been trained to do everything. Mm-hmm. They sacrifice too much to the point of giving up self. So you have to have a self, but not a narcissistic self. Well,
and I've talked to women who are sometimes on the other side. Their children maybe are young adults and they're not needing as much scaffolding, or now suddenly they're in the empty nest.
Oh yeah.
And they're saying, I don't know who I am.
That's right. That's what happens. You become a caretaker above and beyond being a person that you can never afford to do, because that just destroys you. So now she has to rebuild or build a self. Mm-hmm. I've helped people do that too.
Wow.
It's hard to do.
Now, I've got a question. I keep thinking about this. There is a book called The 5 Love Languages. And when you talk about, and what they do is and I always forget they were, but I know that's like affirmation. Some people need to be affirmed, or they need gifts, or they need quality time. And there's 2 more. I always forget what they are.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
But I'm wondering, it goes along with the needs. If you're figuring out
Well, after you read that book, if you said you read that book,
yeah.
I would have you talk about your needs based on that book.
Right.
And then we can talk about that.
Or take a test to find out.
But the problem with the book, I don't know what the book, I've heard of it. The problem with the book is it won't give you the answer underneath that. Those are the things I need. I'm here to hear what those needs are more specifically and clearly. And that's why I like to work with couples, because then they can hear what each other need that they didn't know. Because most people don't sit back. Most couples don't take that time. They either do it naturally or they don't know how to do that. So, yeah, I don't know anything to help. I don't give reading assignments, because I think that doesn't get what I'm doing. It gives people tools. Mm-hmm. That's another tool somebody can use. But I think of what happens in this society is we work all around everything and not delve into it. So there's just tons of support books and things to read and do an assignment, blah, 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 books. Self-help, all that. And in the end, they need to sit down with a third party and kind of delve into that, because it's very hard to do on your own. It sometimes helps people get further away in their relationships.
Do you have a list of questions immediately that you start with?
Not specifically. Well, I start, do you want to stay or do you want to go?
We know that one. Yeah.
One. But then I ask them their story as they know it. And that story will end up changing after they've worked with me for a while, because I want to hear their history, including how they got together. How did you end up getting together? Because to me, it's no mystery. I think there's needs that are deficits and strengths that come together and people get together. I think it's really remarkable, mm-hmm. And then how does that system work? That's what I gather a lot of information. I don't take notes. I listen. And I hope I still have a good memory. And I try to take all those pieces, and then they're sitting here in the back of my mind. And then when things come up, I'll say, oh, well, you said this. I say, I did. I say, yeah. And
Yep, you did.
and it seems like this is a contradiction to what you thought, whatever. And some people think their marriage is over, and it's not. The stress is what is got to be looked at.
So bottom line, how do we reduce stress when we have a special needs child or learning disabled or there's stuff going on? What do you think?
Well, the teamwork is hugely important to all of that. And you have to have somebody doing some research for you. Actually, I'm going to refer you to a friend of mine who runs a program in Massachusetts that deals with parents and families with kids that are involved in the system for different reasons. He just sent me all the material. Yesterday we talked about you behind your back.
Oh, great.
So I'll forward all that to you. That might be helpful. There's no way to, stress is not a bad thing. Stress that overwhelms you is a bad thing, because stress also teaches us how to manage ourselves. There's no such thing as no stress life or no whatever. And I, just to tell you how I work, I don't believe anybody has a solution that's final or big or fix it like that. I did a lot of training in Gestalt therapy and Gestalt Institute, and what the theory behind it is, we're a mesh of all these different experiences, and when things come out forward that have to be addressed, you address them. They go back into balance, and something else comes forward. So from the day we're born to the, well, not maybe from born, but mostly to the day you die, you're problem solving. If you look at your life as problem solving, you can live with it much better. You can have much less anxiety and depression. And we overtreat anxiety with medications when people can learn to manage stress and manage depression in a different way. A few people have medical issues, but most people can learn to live without medication and learn how to handle their lives. So that's what I do. And panic attacks are like on the rise, and I'm working with a lot of people, adults who have panic attacks that need to figure out how to put balance in their life.
Wow, thank you. This has been a lot of good information. I'm going to go back through and look at all the notes too.
Yeah. Somebody
Good
needs
stuff.
to see if I lied about anything.
I don't think so.
No, I don't do that.
Jim, thank you so much for
You're
being
welcome.
here today.
Yeah.
You have just given so much information.
Enjoyed it.
I think a lot of people will think more about getting to their fears and getting to that early trauma.
Yeah. If a couple's already open to it, they don't necessarily have to see a therapist to get there. They may have never thought about how to put that in there. But people who can't, which is a lot of people, it's good to see somebody, and if not me, somebody who delves deeper than services.
Surface.
You know, like in the world of social work, you provide services and access, and that's real important. But what I do is a little different than that. It's helpful to have people like what you guys are doing to learn what the services are available.
Yeah, thank you. This has been really, really helpful.
You're welcome.
Thanks again, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
For parents listening, I hope you take away not just the information, but also the encouragement that you are not alone in this. To take the next step, grab your copy of Pathway to Hope Resource Guide for Special Needs on Amazon. It's a roadmap filled with strategies, tools, and encouragement to help your family thrive. And for a personalized roadmap, check out the Hope Recovery Map on our Healing Complex Kids resource page. It guides families step by step with tailored tools and resources. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, where we share more tips, stories, and updates to support you every step of the way. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with another family who could use some hope. Together, we can make sure no family feels alone in teaching this important information. Thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, progress may be slow, but every step forward matters. And no matter where you are in the journey, there is help, there is support, and there is hope.